I want to be able to go ahead and introduce our other teammates that are on this panel with myself. Jose Bodipo-Memba. He is the Director of Sustainable Communities at SMUD. Good morning, Jose. Then we have Kacey Lizon. She's the Deputy Director of Planning and Programs at SACOG. Welcome, Kacey. And then we have Evan Schmidt, and she is the CEO at Valley Vision. Good morning, Evan. We're excited. We want to have a great conversation. And I just want to make sure that we are on time and my folks are giving me the thumbs up so we can go ahead and do great introductions. Is that cool? All right. So we'll start with Jose. I want to give each of the panelists the opportunity to tell us about yourselves, your background, what brings you to this work, but more importantly, what you love so much about our Sacramento region.
Thank you so much, Kendra. I hope you guys can hear me okay.
Yes.
Really honored to be here on this panel. And thanks again for the Asian Pacific Chamber for putting this together. My name is Jose Bodipo-Memba. I'm the Director of Sustainable Communities for SMUD. And what do I love about Sacramento? The better question is, what don't I love about Sacramento? I think what I see here on this panel in this conversation, the fact that we're taking on the issue of building back better together in a cross-cultural conversation is what I love. Living in the most diverse city in the world, from my perspective, it's not statistically valid, but I'm going to live by it, is what I love about Sacramento. I love the fact that my neighbors reflect the world. I love the fact that also this is one of those spaces and places where all of us have an opportunity to create an impact on the community that we live in. I've been in other cities, I've been in other regions. Sacramento is a special place and has the opportunity to do things no one else can do. And working at SMUD, I'm proud to work for a company that takes it seriously. And when we talk about clean powering our city, we're talking about the entire city. We want to make sure that everyone has a chance for a quality of life that's the best. We don't want zip codes to be the differentiator between life expectancy. We want the fact that the best life expectancy is in Sacramento and the greater Sacramento region. So I'm really here to talk about what we're doing at SMUD to partner. And I'm great to see Kacey and Evan, folks that we work with on a regular basis, on trying to make sure that everyone's involved in this building back conversation and being intentional about that and providing programs to make sure folks aren't just working, but folks are pushing Sacramento forward. So that's what I'm excited about. I also love food. So I love the fact that the Farm to Fork Capital is here. Unfortunately, it doesn't help with my belt. So I'm working on that. So thank you so much, Kendra.
Absolutely. And next we have Kacey. Let us know, Kacey, about your background and what you love about Sacramento.
Sure thing. I'm so excited to be here already. So I'm Kacey Lizon and Deputy Executive Director for Planning and Programs at SACOG. I am from Sacramento. So I moved away. I came back. I have my actual comparison of life in other places, and I love this place. I love the diversity of people, the diversity of place. I live in the region. I actually technically live in the city of Sacramento, but I have family all over this region. I have family in the urban and suburban and the rural parts of this region. And I work for a regional agency. So I'm always thinking about this. So it sort of embodies, the life that I live, to be able to work for the cities and counties of the Sacramento region. They are the membership and who make up the board of directors for SACOG. And I also love that this is a region that it's big enough to have so many interesting things to do, so much potential, so much to explore, and yet it's small enough that we can actually make some amazing and wonderful change. We can be innovative. We are scrappy, and we figure out how to do things differently and creatively. So there you go.
Perfect. And we have my dear friend, Evan. We go way, way back. But Evan, tell us what you love about Sacramento, but more importantly, tell us what you do over there at the Valley Vision.
Thank you, Kendra. It's so great to see you and Kacey, you and Jose as well. So I'm Evan Schmidt. I'm the CEO of Valley Vision. Valley Vision is a nonprofit and a civic leadership organization. We're located in Sacramento, but we're regionally facing. Our interest is in livable communities, and we advance livable communities with our triple bottom line values, which are economic prosperity, environmental sustainability, and social equity. And I've been at Valley Vision for the last 7 years and became a CEO about 1.5 years ago. Tell you a little bit about me and my background, and that's the same question as. Sorry, can you still hear me?
Yes, I can. Your video is a little not moving, but we can definitely hear you. No worries. Keep going.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
I'm having an internet problem. But so, Kendra, you mentioned we go way back.
Yes.
I've been in this region for 20 years, and I came here to go to graduate school at UC Davis. And what I love about this region started unfolding when I moved here, and it was, I came from Kansas. I'm from the Midwest, and moving to California was like this magical experience of discovery. I moved here pretty much sight unseen, and I remember marvel after marvel of experiencing the food, the farmers markets, the bikeable communities, the people, everything about it was just one new marvel after another. It really was. And it's only grown since then. And I think now when I think of some of the things that I love the most, I think it's the big city and small town feeling of the region at the same time. I agree with Kacey that it's big enough that you can have an impact, but small enough you can really connect and feel like you're making a difference. I love the trails that we have here. So I love the natural resources of the region. And I love being in California. I love the environment of California.
Awesome, Evan. Thank you. And just a little bit about me. So Kindra Montgomery-Block, I too am a daughter of Sacramento, born and raised in South Sacramento. I've lived in Southern California. I've lived in the Bay Area. But when I had the opportunity to come home and really work on health equity issues at the Sierra Health Foundation, I took them up on that opportunity and have been doing community impact ever since. And to that, I'm about 80 days into a new position here at the Kings as the Vice President of Diversity, Equity, and Social Impact. So very excited to be in the center of Sacramento, right here in DOCO, to make sure that economic justice lives within, not only internally within these walls, but externally, and that there's pathways for all of our community to not only enjoy sports and entertainment, but also understand that we are the 4th, maybe 5th largest economy. And when you think about California, and we sit in the center of that, and what justice we have and the opportunity to go and build, making sure that everyone is a part of it and very inclusive. And so I want to thank our panelists for joining us, but let's get into it. Let's really talk about how do we build pathways back better, right? Pathways to building back better. The work that I know that I have done has been both around health equity and racial justice throughout the neighborhoods and in the community here in the region, really. And one of the ways that I've always talked about kind of building back better is that you're only as good as your best relationships. And so I want to give it to the panel here. When you think about building back better, what are the type of relationships? Who are your folks that you're able to connect with, bring around the table, and have these in-depth conversations when it thinks about coming back after COVID, rebuilding the rebirth of our city, and really making sure that we are on top as the Sacramento region?
I'd be happy to jump in. And
yes, please.
It's at SMUD, we really believe, we're a community public utility. We talked about the great energy from the previous panel. I mean, literally that's our business, but it is all about community. And we've really emphasized the partnership component of our relationship with our customers. Again, our customers elect our board, they help guide our policy. And particularly when COVID hit, we had to make sure that we made a commitment to continue to give back, not just in dollars and cents, but in terms of giving opportunity and hope, and also keeping the lights on and making sure that wasn't a burden while we were dealing with so many issues. So really, we look at partnerships with organizations like the Asia Pacific Chamber. We look at, we have 130 partnerships multi-year with nonprofits from every community represented. And we also, beyond that, sponsor over 900 events a year, in which we give money, we give time, not to mention our employees raise over $500,000 a year in terms of volunteer and community service, because our employees are the same folks who live in those neighborhoods. So we've really been just trying to focus on that partnership and figure out how we can help. And when we talk about a 2030 clean carbon future, it's not just because it's good for SMUD, it's because, like you talked about from a health equity standpoint, the communities that are most impacted by poor air quality with the life expectancy issues are our most underserved communities. So while those might not be the issues that are at the top of the importance list for most families on a day-to-day basis, when you look at asthma rates, when you look at the ability of not being able to go outside and play, and that was emphasized during COVID, SMUD's really trying to make sure that we're contributing to the overall sustainability of our customers. So whether it's through housing weatherization, we can't do that work unless we're a trusted partner. And so part of our job has been and will continue to be to make sure folks know that we're not just that bill that you don't want to see, but we're actually 2,000 employees who live, work right next to you and want to find a better way for you to live your life. And the best part of our partnership is we've been working with SACOG, we've been working with Valley Vision, but we've been working with all the chambers of commerce. We've been working with nonprofits, everything from Next Move all the way to the Urban League, all the way across the board, small nonprofits and big nonprofits. So for us, the partnership piece is the best way to start because the community members have the best ideas. We can help execute them.
Absolutely. I always like that notion of we want to be connected to the people that are connected to not only the issue, but the solutions. And that involves the partnerships and getting down on the ground. Okay, Kacey and Evan, what do you think about when you think about partnerships and who you bring around the table to build right now?
Yeah, so we are, at our basic level as a council of government, we are the platform for all of the cities and counties in the region. So at a minimum, that's that, right? And when everyone is, when we're at our best, we're the connective tissue between all of them so that they can have a bigger impact. And then on top of that, because we are that venue for them, we also have the ability, and I look at this panel here and the organizations that are represented. We work with our other government partners like SMUD. We work with our nonprofit partners like Valley Vision. We're working with our partners who represent business in the Asian Chamber, in the Metro Chamber, in the Greater Sacramento Economic Council. So we're trying to work with all of them. I remember from the poll that just came before our panel where it said, like, who do you think is responsible? I checked all the boxes because really, what is the proverb? If you want to go far, go alone. But if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. At the end of the day, there is no one single solution to building back better. We deal with so many goals that one cannot be more important than the other. So we are trying to figure out how to work together across public, nonprofit, private, community sectors, and also up and down, right? The other partner that I checked off in that was state. Like, we've got to get the state to be a partner for us, both because they're housed here, but also because there's so much state policy that affects, our region's potential. So.
Absolutely. Evan's my friend when we come to the built environment, right, Evan?
That's right.
Tell us about your partnerships.
So if you ask somebody, what does Valley Vision do? I think maybe the first thing you'll hear from them is, oh, Valley Vision's conveners. And we really, that is part of our DNA, is bringing people together for collaboration. And we work across a really broad spectrum of issues because we are so focused on this triple bottom line and on livability. And so if I look across our different initiatives, we really capture such a broad piece of the community. And I think the other thing that we are is we're bridge builders. When we're at our best, we're building bridges. And I think to go to that point of we really have to be connected with those who are closest to the problem. So really deep community engagement, all the way to our leadership networks and our institutions that we work with every day to ensure that decisions that are being made, that programs are being implemented, really take into account not only the full spectrum of issues, but voices all along the way. So when you look at our digital inclusion work, we manage the Sacramento Coalition for Digital Inclusion, where we work with our educational institutions, the public library, community-based organizations, and business, and plenty of others who are really focused on all the different dimensions of the issue, I'll take an initiative where we're partnering with SMUD and SACOG and many others that are on this call, the Cleaner Air Partnership, where we bring together business, regulators, and community-based organizations to find kind of common solutions to address clean air issues in our region. So really at our core, we're building bridges between these diverse stakeholder groups and engaging partners all across the spectrum. And I would say that one of the ways that we do that also, I think, is by being very data forward. I think kind of establishing our common agenda with data and then bringing people in to really address how do we advance solutions in this area. All of that's just very important to the work that we do.
Yes, I'm glad you talked about data, Evan. Hoping that we can pivot and talk about that really quickly. Part of what has happened to me in the last 60 days, not only just, being embraced at a new role here at the Kings, but it was not an easy decision to leave philanthropy, the Sierra Health Foundation, Chet Hewitt, just the strongest mentor you could have, and say, hey, we want to be able to, really move into a new type of economic justice. And when I started to make the conversation around moving here to the Kings, it really was about, well, Kendra, you can continue to do all the great resources and services and make sure that there's huge levels of community impact. You can keep doing that, but if you don't have a way to create economic justice for folks, then it's all for naught. You never can get people out of this kind of cycle of poverty. So again, my goal here is to really create on-ramps for all of us to be a part of the city center. And in that, Evan, I know that you have a lot of data, and if you could share with us really what has been the impact of COVID when it comes to women and BIPOC, Black, Indigenous people of color, what happens to our kids, what has happened to our income and economics in our region.
Yeah, thanks, Kendra. I'd be happy to. One of the main initiatives or a big initiative that Valley Vision has is around public opinion polling. And we work within the 6-county region, and we have a really robust panel of respondents of over 1,000 people. We partner with Sac State to do this, and we do 2 or 3 polls a year where we look at some of the most pressing issues in our region. And in the last year and a half, one big focus has been on as for everybody, the impact of COVID on people's day-to-day lives. And we've done 3 surveys within that time in order to really track what's been happening for people and how they've been experiencing COVID. And I'll just give you really a high-level look at some of the things that we've found. First, when you look at economic impacts, we found that over 40% of respondents overall had a reduction in their income. But when you look at BIPOC populations, it's much higher. It's all the way from 51 to 59% across Black, Hispanic, and Asian populations. So really intense economic impact on people's lives throughout the pandemic. And that really translates to, how do you afford basic needs and things like housing and food. We saw food insecurity really spike up to 16% and higher in overall populations during the pandemic, but again, much higher for BIPOC populations. So that was a really huge impact that we're still, and it wasn't born in the pandemic, that disparity, of course, but it certainly was intensified by the pandemic, and we're still experiencing that. I think another piece is the transformation of the workplace. And so we all know, as we're here on Zoom, that we moved largely remote in many ways. But we also saw a huge change in the profile of jobs during this time. So we saw some jobs in hospitality, tourism, things like that really shrink. And then we saw other jobs actually stay quite stable. And this also created a real disparate impact across our populations. And it also, for us, as we think about Build Back Better, it really means what are the jobs of the future and how do we start to transition people's skills into those jobs to be more ready for these remote jobs, to be more ready for digital jobs and things like that. And this transformation of the workplace took a toll on parents in particular. Young people struggled a lot. When we asked people in our poll if they felt like they were more or less employable, young people in particular were more likely to say that they feel like they're less employable. So I think this has been a very destabilizing force for particularly young people in our region. I think that's something we really have to think about. I want to make a couple notes about the mental and emotional toll of the pandemic. We asked people about rates of depression, stress levels, feelings of hopelessness, and these numbers are really high across all of the populations, but for our BIPOC populations and our young populations, much higher. So I don't think I'm telling anyone anything they don't already know, that there were some very serious mental and emotional impacts from the pandemic. But again, I think we can really see that it affected different populations of people differently. And that's really important to think about as we think about recovery. And I think maybe I'll stop there, but I think the data, the data really telling us, like I said, that that we have a lot to recover from. I think there's a lot of promise there too, in terms of how we build systems back differently to really change based on what we experienced during the pandemic. But I think having a snapshot of data like that and understanding the impact on different populations is a good starting place as we think about what do we need to change moving forward.
Excellent. Thank you, Evan. I want to give it to Jose and Kacey. What are some of the data points that you guys are connecting right now with your current work when you think about projects or programs that you all want to touch upon? I want to talk about Green Means Go and the California Mobility Center, Prosperity Partnerships, and any other kind of programs and projects that you have going that you're really connecting and prioritizing how to build back better.
Definitely, and I won't steal the Green Means Go thunder from Kacey, because she's going to be the expert in that space. But I think the best part of what we've learned is that we can't do this alone. Again, Kacey's proverb is perfect. So we've been leveraging the information that Valley Vision has presented and using that with some of the data sets that we have. So one of the tools that we've used is our Sustainable Communities Resource Priorities Map, which has taken some really important data sets, opportunity zone information, promise zone information, SB 535 disadvantaged community information, poverty information by zip code for Sacramento County, medically underserved area information, health equity information, climate change vulnerability information, and overall Cal environmental information. Put all that data in one place and helped us identify where that intersectionality actually occurs between all of those key points to community sustainability, and have identified on that map those focus areas where essentially we need to put in more effort collectively as a region, and we at SMUD have to do that work. What's been very interesting is this was all happening prior to COVID. When we started getting the COVID data as to where the COVID rates were increased, we were able to overlay that information over our existing map to see again that there was a direct correlation between all of these other issues, whether it's related to school success rates, all the way to tree canopy information. A lot of those concentrations were in the same area. So we've actually, in the chat, we've included a link to the map. This is something that's publicly available, and we want community members to use these tools to better inform how they do that work. And we're going to be having a new version of that map that's going to include some of the Green Means Go data. So I'm excited about that next year. But we've been using that to help us identify where our investments go, where our infrastructure improvements go, to ensure that it's done in an equitable way. When you put on, for example, the EV layer over our map, you'll see that there's certain neighborhoods where there's significant gaps for that infrastructure improvement. So we're using that information to make sure that we're bringing everyone along together. And the CMC, the California Mobility Center, is a great example of that work coming together. SMUD was a key supporter and funder and founder of that program. It's now its own 501c3. Sac State's involved, a number of entities on this call are involved. But what's great was we were able to leverage that map information, and the CMC is located in one of those quartiles that we identify as a part of the map, with the intentionality of ensuring that the jobs that are created through the California Mobility Center, which are new jobs tied to new innovation, making California the center of the mobility innovation of the United States. That's the goal, with startups in that space, to make sure that those jobs are occurring in underserved communities, but not gentrifying those communities, but actually engaging folks early on. So what we've also done is make sure we've had workforce training programs with a number of partners, including the Asian Chamber, Urban League, La Familia, Asian Resources, and others, to get folks scaled up for those job opportunities. Also working with nonprofits on the ground, like Green Tech, on EV mobility hubs. So we're actually having our first EV mobility hub in Del Paso Heights. And we're working on trying to get funding so we can do at least up to 52 mobility hubs in underserved neighborhoods in the region. Again, we're not doing that alone. We co-wrote that request with SACOG, with RT, with SMUD, and let me make sure I don't forget here, gotta check my notes here, in the air district. And so that is, again, how we work together, both from every community, but also every agency. Because a lot of times what happens in the Sacramento region is we go after grants, we go after funding, and we compete against each other and knock each other out. Instead, we're actually trying to do that in a collective way. The last thing I'll just say is we've really put an emphasis on workforce development. And that's something, again, we've been working collectively, because the pathways that you're talking about is how do we create upward pathways from high school, or folks who didn't graduate high school, folks who are formerly incarcerated, to get back into society to participate in this green economy. So we've been working on job training curriculum. We've been working with grid alternatives to not just do solar installs, which is extremely important, but we've actually updated their curriculum to be preparing them for energy storage jobs and EV installation jobs and the nature and things of that nature. And then I'd say the biggest ask I'll have of anyone on this call is we need businesses. We need businesses to be bold and to go out there and reach out to maybe some folks who previously might need a little bit of refinement, and to work with folks like SMUD, work with some of the nonprofits on that job training, the soft skills training, so that those folks can change their families' lives. Because the reality is, if we improve our environment, we actually create new jobs. And if we create new jobs, we actually create an economically sustainable neighborhood that works for everybody. So that's just one of the key pieces, but the Green Means Go piece is huge in that space. I wanted to give Kacey a chance to talk about that.
Thank you, Jose. And as I'm listening to this, I'm thinking about how can we partner together and leverage that in the green zones that Green Means Go is going to invest in. So that's a perfect transition there. So some of the things that we need critically building back better, we need housing in more convenient locations that more people can afford. We need to create and place way more jobs near that housing. We need clean, non-polluting ways for those folks to get around to those closer jobs and closer amenities and closer schools. And so what Green Means Go, and what Evan has said in her description of the impacts of COVID is totally right, that we are seeing an exacerbation of inequities in that COVID data. That didn't just happen though. That's built upon a long history of structural racism, of structural disinvestment and marginalization. And so what we're trying to do when we're growing back better and growing back inclusively and equity, or inequitably, is to think about how are we changing that. So one of the things, a major initiative that SACOG has is Green Means Go. It is not ours alone. In fact, this program is a strategy. It's a strategy to achieve climate, equity, and prosperity goals. As I said, those three things that we need. It's trying to help harness some power towards that. Our cities and counties, 23 out of 28 of them have identified areas called green zones, and I can throw a map in the chat soon. These are areas within their existing communities, neighborhoods, their commercial corridors, their downtowns, their light rail station areas. They're places that historically were developed not entirely humanely, right? They're like the commercial corridors I'm thinking about, they were developed for automobiles. They're at the scale of cars. They're for you to get to with cars. That's what that was all about. They're also, therefore, when you think about climate goals and equity goals and prosperity goals, they're also places with a lot of potential to put people closer together and make it more human scale. And so what we worked with our cities and counties, they have plans to revitalize these places. They've been on the books forever, but there's constantly been some sort of roadblock that came up to hinder the revitalization of these places. It was the recession of 2008. It was the lack of redevelopment tools for them. It was so many different things. And so we were seeing this coming to a head in a housing crisis, in a jobs crisis. And so we developed this program of Green Means Go. And we advocated with them to the state for funding to be able to bring into this. So we have a grant program now. We are going to be developing this grant program with $38 million to invest in the infrastructure, not just transportation. SACOG has transportation money, but the other infrastructure, water, sewer, other utilities to support housing within these green zones, because that's just not available to be able to do that in a way that actually makes for more types of housing accessible to more people. And so the challenge and the invitation I put out there is to all of our government partners who also have some sort of funding or investment to look at these green zones and work with us to try to maximize the impact of our investments there. For our nonprofit partners, I look to you. What resources can you bring to not, so we're working on like the hard infrastructure side, but as we're talking about, this is about people. And so how do we engage people, you know, in the development of these places so that they get to benefit from it, so that they are a part of it. And to our businesses, I invite you to look at how can you be bold in thinking about your role in participating in this process. There is so much potential there. So I'm going to stop there because I know that we have a lot more to cover, but I'm really excited about, again, the collective impact that we can have across the region, again, for climate, equity, and prosperity goals.
I love it. I love it. Climate, equity, and prosperity. I've already got 2 asks of folks here. We want businesses to be bold, and we really want folks to think about we want to challenge you all to think about funding and investments that's going to maximize the new infrastructure dollars that are coming down from multiple state and federal agencies. And so I think that's a very big, right on ask, Kacey. Next question, pivot. What are the ways, how can we build a pipeline of inclusive, equitable projects? And I feel like, Kacey, you really did just start that with thinking of not just thinking, kind of with blinders on, but we talked about partnerships, who you'd bring around the table, what kind of projects are already out there, what kind of innovation are we looking to spur? But this question is really about, if we were forward thinking, what type of innovation, what projects can we put in the pipeline right now that could be really create that kind of equitable lens across what we do here in our region?
Kendra, I could jump in on that one.
Oh, good. Good.
All right. Well, I think that is such a good question in this moment, because as we think about recovery, there are so many investments that are possible to come into the region, and so many big things that we could do with that. And so it's really important to be leaning into what are the big ideas and what's really needed for those. It's a challenge for all of us. How do we be bold and I think very inclusive as we're doing this planning? One big kind of framework that we have right now is the prosperity strategy. And this is an inclusive economic development plan that's a collaboration with Valley Vision, SACOG, Asian Chamber, the Metro Chamber, and the Greater Sacramento Economic Council. And this started a few years ago with an economic assessment from the Brookings Institute that looked at kind of how are we doing in the region? Where's our opportunities and where do we have big challenges? And what came out of that was that we have some economic disparities that we really need to address, including educational attainment and workforce challenges. And we have some big opportunities around a few tradable clusters. So that includes health, mobility, and food and ag. So what the prosperity strategy does is provide us this foundation as we think about where's our economic opportunities and where do we need to really grow and innovate. But I also think at this moment, it's really up to us to look at, how do we meet this opportunities and leverage this opportunities to create a very inclusive table for innovation and opportunity. And I think that when we look at take the California Mobility Center, which is this amazing aspirational goal, and this thing that we're making a reality that our region will really stand out around advanced mobility and being very innovative. I think a challenge to all of us right now is how do we make that real and address the needs in our communities through creating pipelines into these very aspirational and innovative opportunities that we have in front of us. And so through the investments that are coming into the region now, I think we can really look at what are some place-based neighborhood strategies that really bring people into these aspirations that we have. What are the governance structures and processes that we need in order to make sure everybody has a table, or everybody's at the table, in order to really think about how we can all be a part of this big vision. I want to also note for Valley Vision as a regional organization, It goes beyond Sacramento County, and how do we look at the rural areas of our region and really say, what are some strategies that really work to lift up those communities and as well, and how do we integrate those communities into our big economic development aspirational goals? So I see, I see the prosperity strategy and the strategies that are identified there as a big, as a foundation for these opportunities. And I think, when we think about building back better and we think about what's at hand now, it's how do we link where we are now to big aspirations with inclusive strategies of engagement and really kind of wrap around services and opportunities that create these on-ramps into these big economic development goals.
Evan, can you tell us where can we find this prosperity strategy report? Is it a Brookings report?
There's a Brookings report. Yeah, I'm going to I'll drop the link in the chat. We have a website for it. It is a Brookings report, and it's also a report that's been produced within our region as well.
Okay, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much. I think of, my time in living and growing up in South Sacramento Valley High specifically, and we start to think about building back better. When you come from South Sacramento and you've been there for, over 30 years now, and you see that there hasn't been a lot of investment, that there is no grocery stores. The ones that I grew up with don't even exist anymore, that the roads look a certain way, that the parks look a certain way, that, there's a lot of different social and economic toxins that really make that neighborhood hard to live and hard to have access and resources. And, as I keep mentioning, part of my goal is to make sure that we use this platform not to just get out, what should we be thinking about innovatively, but how do we actually prioritize some of those neighborhoods that have those really desperate, disparities when it comes to health, racial justice, and economic justice. My next question really is about what are the projects that you are most excited about, and I'll ask the question specifically. You all are working directly or doing work around development projects in our 6-county region. Please describe what solutions you have seen in this development and what's working.
Kendra, do you mind if I cheat a little bit and try to answer your question and speak to your last statement?
I do, I love it. Go ahead.
Because what you said about Valley High, you can insert 15 other communities in our region, and that would be the same. And I think that all of us are here. We happen to represent, I think, amazing organizations, but all those organizations don't exist without the communities that we serve. And I think that one thing that we can all do a better job of is meeting people where they are and listening to them and communicating with them in a manner in which they can understand, but also engage. Because what I mean by understand is that, again, COVID just revealed how hard it is to do outreach, period, let alone when you can't get to spaces, when folks don't have access to computers or internet or Wi-Fi or whatever it might be. And then, what language are we using? What level of vocabulary are we using? Are we taking into account the massive growth of non-English as a first language speakers? So we have to change. Our businesses are going to have to change how we communicate. And we have to get used to going to people. And then in terms of how we engage, we have to listen more, because folks have a lot of great ideas, but also they have a lot of questions. We've been doing a number of listening sessions with community members, and it's been a great opportunity for us as we've launched our 2030 Carbon Zero plan to not just tell folks about why that plan is important, but also to listen and say, well, what does it mean to you? Or does this make sense? Or why isn't this important? And really make sure that we're hearing folks out and making adjustments to that process. And so I would just say, so what are we working on now? That Carbon Zero plan is the largest thing for SMUD, but that's not a physical project, but there's going to be thousands of physical projects that are generated from that. We're going to see energy storage plants that are going to require folks to not just build, but maintain and work in those spaces. There's going to be tons of clean energy jobs that are created. You can see from the city's building electrification strategy, that's in alignment with this carbon zero concept. And then you're talking about the governor saying all EVs, new EVs by 2035. I'm a little bit selfish in the sense of like electricity is the way because that's what we do. But the reality is that's where the policies are going. So we have to make sure that folks are prepared to take on those jobs now. And that everyone has access to that. So for us, we're excited about working with curriculum with schools to help students get faster and more advanced and really focusing on Title I schools. We're excited about what's happening with the CMC. We're excited about all the growth that's occurring in Citrus Heights and Rancho Cordova, because that means construction jobs. That means EV installation jobs. So we're kind of those folks in the background that get a chance to move forward. But I'm also excited on the Sacramento area zero EV deployment strategy, which could bring in potentially billions of dollars into our region. Again, that's a partnership with SACOG, with RT, with the Air District and SMUD, but it also will bring other folks to the table. So I won't hog the microphone anymore, but I just wanted to make sure that we recognize that we have to and are starting to do things differently in terms of reaching folks in Valley High and other neighborhoods.
Right on. You know, I'm pro. Go ahead.
I
Really quickly, I want to
comment.
tell the audience that we have about 10 minutes before Q&A. And so if you have any questions and wanting to make sure that you get to talk to the panelists, please type that in the chat and we'll be ready in about 10 minutes. And then I also want to tell our panelists, let's start thinking about head, heart, and feet. When you think about what are we thinking right now? What are we feeling about our movement? And what are some of the action steps that we can give all of our participants on this call?
Okay, so I have to like piggyback on this particular thread here. And I also have to say, it's like totally like speaking to my heart, Kendra, that you're talking about Valley High. I'm also from Valley High. So when you're describing that, I'm like, I know that feeling of looking around your neighborhood and not feeling the love.
Yes.
Right? Like I know that feeling. And
but I love Valley
honestly,
High though.
That's what drives, yeah, right. My family still lives there. It's still my home, right? So so when you were saying like what projects, and I was like, well, let's step back a second. Like, can we engage our community to ask them what they need? Like, because I don't know I know that has not been done consistently across the board. I'm not going to say that it never happens, but we know that is not the normal course of action. And so, and you know, SACOG as the, you know, sitting here as like the city and county, like council of governments, like we're recognizing that. And so our particular agency doesn't do direct community engagement, right? Because that's what our cities and counties do. And so our job is to figure out how can we support them in trying to do some equitable engagement. And so one of the other programs we're very excited about launching is our Engage, Empower, Implement program, which is literally to give the resources to our, cities and counties and our other transportation public agency partners to engage with communities to co-create a plan. Like we're trying to get a pipeline of projects that were co-created with community that we can fund and that can leverage the funding opportunities that come from other public sources. So that's our hope. And, it's another call for support to everyone who's attending today, because it can't happen alone, right? We know that it can't.
Thank you, Kacey. I'm glad to know that we're from Valley High. Evan, what should we be knowing, about what you all are doing at Valley Vision? What are you all prioritizing, and what's kind of your head, heart, and feet that you would like to give to our folks that have joined us this morning?
Yeah, thank you. And I want to also jump in on what Kacey and Jose were saying, because I agree. If we want different outcomes, we have to do things differently. And I know I've been really focused for Valley Vision this year on how do we serve as a really good backbone for our partners, and how do we really lean in and listen. And I think that's key to building bridges. And when you look at how that plays out in projects, I think for one thing, that's being really willing to distribute money. I think we really have to push money into the programs that are closest to the impacted communities. And that's a really important function for those of us who are building bridges and who are who are playing that role of convener. We really have to distribute resources equitably. And I think we have to co-create solutions. I really, Kacey, I like what you said about that. I think that's a really important part, to listen and to co-create solutions. And for our work at Valley Vision, I'll highlight a couple things. I think in our digital and inclusion work, really looking at what changes do we need to help create on-ramps for people into jobs by creating access to broadband, access to technology for every household, and education around digital skills. So where do we need to pivot to make sure everybody gets the digital skills they need? One thing that I'm excited about, we are launching a new digital portal to be used by community-based organizations, helping people navigate where are the digital resources in our communities. And it's going to be a really simple platform, very easy to use, and I really think help clarify the environment around how to get the digital resources that are needed in the community to make the changes that are really needed. So that's one example. I'll really quickly, the second one, I'll talk about clean air and air monitoring. We're working with neighborhoods in Oak Park and North Sacramento to place air monitors, and really taking the lead of the neighborhood coalition that's working there. So helping facilitate the process, but through a grant with the California Air Resources Board, helping neighborhoods create action plans around clean air, which is I think really important to the livability of those neighborhoods. So to answer your head, heart, and feet question, I think what's on my mind the most is connection, and really looking at the human to human connection that is needed right now. I think that we have to be very connected to our own humanity and others as we're all kind of healing from this really difficult time. I think really hungry for those opportunities to get out and see people. But I also think as we move forward in our program work, what are the things that we're doing that really focus on that human to human connection to help lift each other up, to work collaboratively and productively, really listening to each other, and to move forward together, because we know we have a lot of challenges that we need to face, and a lot of changes that we need to make. And so to do that, we have to come with our whole heart, with our whole humanity, and be there for each other. So that's really what's on my mind.
I love it. Jose or Kacey, any head, heart, and feet closing remarks?
Okay, I'm going to try it. I want you to think about the resources, the assets, the talents that you can bring to getting us towards climate equity and prosperity goals. I want you to feel hope and some energy to move, and I want you to walk away with collaboration and cooperation together. That's what I'm hoping you're going to do.
Head, heart, and feet. That's right. Okay, Jose, what about you? What could we begin to make sure that we know over there at SMUD, you're working around with what you're thinking, what you're feeling, and what are your actions?
Well, first of all, how do you follow those two amazing speakers? I don't think you can. I'm going to try to have a computer glitch on accident so I can disappear. I would just say, just to piggyback before, what's exciting me right now on my mind, there's opportunities to partner with SMUD through sponsorships, through our Shine Awards, and through our Sustainable Communities partnerships. So please reach out. There'll be information in chat. But what I want people to think about is who's at the table when they're making the decisions, and making sure that every perspective is being thought. Number two, what I want people in their heart, I want folks to lead with empathy in terms of how we move forward, because there's a lot of, we can only start now. We can't change yesterday. We have to move forward, and we've got to care about where people are right now. And then lastly, what I want people to I guess, walk away with, but I'm thinking with feet is the doing part for me. I want folks to invest, and I'm a time, talent, treasure. I want folks to be able to invest their time as volunteers in areas that need it. I want folks to take their talents and their abilities like they're doing here and collaborate, because as mentioned by my two partners, can't do it alone. And then again, we need to put our money back into our region, and to whether it's focusing on the green zones, which would be a great opportunity, or whether it's identifying opportunities to create new jobs. And I see we have some great job creators on the next panel. I want to see it done here in Sacramento. I want us to be the anomaly of how it gets done in the US.
Absolutely. I want to invite our participants, our attendees. If you all have head, heart, and feet that you would like to share with us, please go ahead and drop that in the chat. My head, heart, and feet from the wonderful conversation that we have had here today. One is I'm thinking that we need businesses to act boldly for our communities and for our region. And that is going to take all of us leaning in and stretching a little bit more. And because of that, the investment, the funding, that is what's really going to help us come together. And like you said, Jose, time, talent, and treasures. Time, talent, and treasures. Yes, time, talent, and treasures, and really making sure that we're connecting the dots. And then I got from Evan just really about the collaboration and the humanity and the healing that has to also take place, and acting bold and making sure that we're connecting the dots and the right investments so our communities can be forever stronger. And that's how we're going to build back better. Okay, we're going to go to the Q&A. I'm going to try this, Janice. She says it's like, okay, here we go. Our first question from our attendees. Alex Dumonchel asks, many of our communities need support but don't have the time, energy, or knowledge to get their voices heard. How do we connect directly with community members to hear their voice? Well, my favorite is participatory action research, but I'll let our panelists also weigh in.
I'll jump in with one thought. I think one thing that we've really recognized over the last few years is that you have to, when you ask people for participation, you have to value their time. And so we really try to offer stipends and create, schedule meetings at convenient times, try to remove barriers from people for attending meetings. So that can include childcare or a gift card for food, or especially when we're more in person, actually providing food. But really look at what are the barriers that people are facing. How do you value people's time well and use their time wisely? So make sure that that there is an impact, that they understand what the impact is of their engagement, and really honor the people who take the time to contribute, and know that it's difficult for many people to do that. That's one reason that we do surveying, because it's a quick way for people to participate and to kind of give their perspective. But I think overall, there's a lot of tools you can use to really help open the door for people to engage, acknowledging that it is really a challenge.
I think Evan just wrote the book on how to do it right, so I won't repeat any of those. But I think the other piece, and that I think that SMUD does a really great job is showing up where people already are. And that's why you see so many SMUD tents and our awesome community engagement team and our sustainable communities team out there. Is not just to hand out free stuff, but to give you information, but also to listen. So I think that whatever we can do to figure out where people already congregate, and then by creating built environment spaces where people can connect, it makes it easier for us to have a conversation. The last thing is provide tools to teach people how to do things they don't know how to do. So I'm part of a group called the Urban Land Institute. We put together a toolkit for community engagement for development. I would encourage other organizations in the spaces they are to work on tools to help folks get more engaged, more involved.
Underscoring all of that, and the only thing I will add is another thing that we're trying to work on with some of the funding sources that we and our public agency partners have to use for project development. We're trying to advocate when the guidelines are developed that funding can actually be used to pay for community participation, because that is not in the public side always the case. So there's some structural things that we're trying to advocate for too. And I think we have a more open mind in some of the state and federal programs there, but that is something that we're working on as well.
Excellent. Next question from Leggett, you're off. What actions do we need to prioritize now so that we can all build/strengthen trusted relationships through integration, so that we ensure economic justice is served for all 6 counties surrounding Sacramento? Take that one on.
I'm going to steal from the Brookings Institute report that Evan referenced before. because it was a great study and it talked about, like, again, the increasing economic disparity that exists in our region. And one of the biggest steps that I took away from that report was how the need for us to improve the skill set of our workforce across the board. I think that providing tools to ensure that our workforce is prepared to succeed economically will be key, particularly as right now, if jobs can be done virtually, that means those jobs can go anywhere. We need to make sure that folks here have the skill sets through trade schools, through traditional schools, through internships, apprenticeships, to make sure that we're ready. Because if we aren't ready, it will pass us by. So from my perspective, particularly in the work that we do, that workforce pipeline, pathways, and job readiness is key.
So I'm so glad, because okay, you do that, and then over here on the side, I'm going to focus on the infrastructure and the catalyzing and the inviting the housing to get built for all of them, because we do not have enough housing for all of our people. And we need that too, right? Like, how can you possibly focus when you don't have secure housing?
It's true. Evan?
Yeah, and yeah, I'll throw into the mix to build on the third stool of that is the basic needs. I mean, so that's housing, but it's also food security, it's like transportation, it's childcare. It's really, how are we serving neighborhoods and communities to make sure that they have that foundation to even be able to take advantage of job opportunities. I'd also mention education attainment, so that other foundational piece to make sure that people are able to finish their degrees. One project that Valley Vision is working on is supporting Project Attain. That's looking at helping people who have some education but need to finish their degrees and looking at the impact that can have in their lives. So I think building on all those foundations. And I like the way that question focused on the 6-county region, because there's really different strategies that need to be used across the different geographies of our region. So there could be something very different for rural communities than there is in downtown Sacramento. So really important to take that into consideration as well.
One cherry on top of that one. Go ahead, Kacey.
Oh, I just wanted to say, I also really like that we had something that was like, that we did not have the same answers, but they were all important pieces to actually getting, to getting to the answer. So
absolutely. And I want to add to that answer. What I'm going to do is continue to use the platform that I'm so very honored to have, to make sure that we bring pride to Sacramento, that our city center really represents not only our region, but our entire state, and that there's on-ramps for economic justice to live in these walls and outside of these walls. And we continue to go Kings. I want to thank you all for joining our esteemed panelists today. Mr. Jose Bimba from SMUD. I know I didn't do that justice, but I will, Jose.
Oh, good.
Kacey Lizon from SACOG, Sacramento Area Council of Government. Say that. Say what SACOG really stands for, Kacey.
Sacramento Area Council of Governments. I know it's a mouthful.
Okay, good. I got it right. And then Evan, we did a lot of time at Davis together, CEO of Valley Vision. Thank you so much for bringing the data. And to everyone who's joining us, like, you have the power to head, heart, and feet this region to a better place. And so just thank you to Pat Kushida for always making sure that the Sacramento Asian Chamber is at the pinnacle for making sure that this region is one of the best. And then thank you, Janice, for just having just an incredible way to bring us all together and make sure that this panelist represents the best. And so I submit to you all as the daughter of Sacramento. We're going to keep bringing it. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.